Well, thank you all. Thank you, Scott, for those kind introductory remarks, and what a privilege it is for me to be back at MEC, and it's an even greater privilege to have the opportunity to speak right after Speaker Gunn did. We are both now completing our 6th year in office, and I can say without fear of being corrected here, I could not be more fortunate to have two partners in this endeavor like Governor Phil Bryant and Speaker Philip Gunn. And so I want to thank Speaker Gunn for his efforts to work together to make Mississippi the kind of place that we all want it to be. I also want to congratulate Scott and his team for the generous donation by Cooperative Energy and by Origis Energy. I'm happy to see Mississippi employers investing in our state's educational future. Mississippi Scholars and Mississippi Scholars Tech Masters are two successful programs that engage students and show them how their interests and talents can turn into well-paying careers. It's often said that economic development is a team sport. Well, it is, and job training is an important, if not the most important, part of that team. I had the privilege recently to be in South Carolina with a friend of mine who was recently elevated to the office of governor, Governor Henry McMaster in South Carolina. He said something that night is true in South Carolina, is true in Mississippi, and quite frankly is true everywhere in the United States. And I want to repeat that here for you today. What he said was, in the old days, we used to have people out looking for jobs. But in today's world, we actually have jobs out looking for people. In fact, there are 48,000 jobs available on the state's website looking for the right person with the right skills to fill the needs of today's employers. The fact of the matter is, we have to focus our efforts on bringing better and higher paying jobs to our state, but to do that, we must improve the educational attainment level of our citizens. Now, when you hear us talk about education, you're going to hear us not just talk about any one grade or any one area. When we talk about education, we talk about pre-kindergarten all the way through lifelong learning. That includes our K through 12 institutions, but it also includes our community colleges, our institutions of higher learning, our job training centers, and others. Workforce training is critical to our state's economic future. When attracting new employers to our state, the most important question they have is, do you have the workforce that can produce the products that we plan to send to market? Through public-private partnerships and continued investment in job training programs, we're making progress on raising the educational attainment level of our citizens. With the support of Governor Bryant and Speaker Gunn, we're going to spend nearly $400 million more on public education this year than was spent the year before I became Lieutenant Governor. We've not only invested in public education, though, because we believe you can't just simply spend more money and expect different results. You must be willing to not only invest in education, but also be willing to reform education to ensure that our people are getting what they need. We've done a number of things in the last 6 years that are going to make a difference long term. First, we now have pre-K in communities that won't pre-K through our nationally recognized collaboratives. In fact, Mississippi's pre-K is one of the top 5 models in the entire country. Second, for far too long, Mississippi third graders who could not read at grade level were being elevated to the 4th and 5th grade anyway. I believe very strongly that if a kid is having a hard time reading when they move to the 4th and the 5th grade, the likelihood they're going to be able to do their math and their science and their social studies homework when they're in the 5th, the 6th, and 7th grade is relatively low, and the likelihood that they're then going to become a statistic, a dropout, when they're in the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade is relatively high. That's why we passed the Early Learning Collaborative and the Literacy Promotion Act. Now, when we did that, the naysayers said as many as 50% of Mississippi kids would not be able to pass the test. As many as 50%. We now have 2 years under our belt, and the facts are, in the very first year, 85% of Mississippi third graders passed the test on the first try, and 92% of third graders passed it within the allotted 3 times. In the second year, 92% of Mississippi third graders passed the test on the first try, and a full 97% passed the test within their 3 tries. The fact of the matter is, exactly what we said would happen has happened. Now, we've invested nearly $50 million in hiring reading coaches to help, but what's happened is this. All we've done is raise the level of expectations, and Mississippi administrators, Mississippi teachers, Mississippi parents, and yes, Mississippi kids have risen up and met those increased expectations. That's something we should all be proud of, and it's also something we ought to spend a lot more time bragging about and talking about, because it's going to make a difference in kids' lives. But not only have we seen significant and marked improvement in 4th grade NAEP scores by our 4th graders, we've also seen significant improvement in high school graduation rates. The year I ran for lieutenant governor, the national average for graduation rates was 82%. Mississippi's graduation rate that year was 70.5%. We were a full 12 points behind the national average. In just the last 5 years, the national graduation rate has increased from about 82.3% to just a little bit over 83%. During that time, Mississippi's high school graduation rate has risen from 70.5% to over 82%, a full 12 percentage point gain. We now are less than 1 percentage point behind the national average on graduation rates, and if our trajectory continues, we'll exceed the national average within the next year or so. That is something we should celebrate and spend a lot of time celebrating our teachers and our administrators, our parents, and yes, most importantly, our kids. You know, the press rarely, what Governor Barber used to say, the press rarely covers an airplane that lands safely. And you understand why. But the fact of the matter is, we've got to work together to talk about the good things that are going on in public education in our state. Do we have challenges? Of course we do, but so does every other state in the nation. I am convinced, whether it's our 4th grade NAEP scores or our high school graduation rates, and the significant improvement that we've seen in the last 5 years, are proof positive that working together, we can continue to see significant gains in educational attainment level, and ultimately significant gains in educational attainment level is going to lead to an improved economy.